trying a different take on this. I'm recording on my phone and my laptop at the same time. That way, if it doesn't go through, you still have a way to hear the vocal record. I also have a way to keep a vocal record of all the things that I posted, which I wasn't able to really do with the thread too well. I mean, you could page back, but if I remember correctly, on the phones that I have, the page back record only goes so far. So, it's going to be a very scary world. We know that for some time, the Russians and the Chinese have both been hiring merchant ships to cut undersea cables at their anchors. Now it appears that a report from Germany that the Germans suspect the Russians have actually been sabotaging their military fleet. Now this comes on the announcement that Russia will no longer hopefully be involved in Ukraine. So why do this is the question. Not only why do this is the question now, but why would they have thought to do it before? It wasn't like the EU was sending its own troops to Ukraine. In fact, it was quite clear that the EU was never going to send troops to Ukraine. So why do this? And there was only one reason I can think of in my head. It's Putin proving, hey, I am the biggest, baddest bear on the block. I can mess with you. Don't piss me off or you'll be the next Ukraine. Look, the United States is even backing off. And I know that I'm putting on a conspiracy hat here. But if I were in Poland right now, or in any of the former Russian satellite Slavic countries, I would be extremely worried. I'd be extremely worried. If I were them, I'd be making up a new league of joint defense and commerce, because if I remember correctly, they can't be part of the EU, right? I don't think Belarus and all those guys are actually part of the EU. But if that is the case and the EU won't take you, then you do it yourself, because clearly the EU is not going to save you. And that might mount only a token offense against the Russian bear, but just like in World War I, when a bunch of supposedly chocolate soldiers in Belgium held up the German advance and basically made the rest of World War I's victory possible, you could probably pull something like that off if the Russians ever want to roll tanks west. And I'm still trying to figure out why the Russians want to roll tanks west, because that does seem to be the intention here. I don't get it. You'd make more money and you'd be more stable just letting the West be the West. But that seems to be the thinking. And that's the only thing I can logically conclude from Putin's actions, is that this is setting up a long-term Russian dominance of Europe. Now, Matt's gone off before how the Russians have always been paranoid about being invaded by Europeans. But Europeans now, and likely for several generations, aren't those Europeans anymore. Europeans from before World War II would have deported all the Muslims that are giving them problems. They wouldn't have thought twice about it. Now they wring their hands over even be able to say the words aloud that they're under threat. Did you see where Germany just caved to Iran by refusing to allow the descendant of the Iranian Shahs to be within Germany? And Iran is how far away from German interests? It's like Iran's got an army sitting on the border, slavering to come in. I swear, the lack of testosterone in Europe is highly, highly distressing. And then we got the whole thing about Trump. Now, I've already posted this in text, but let me reiterate. This is bad. This is the worst thing I've seen in his policy decisions ever. You are going to basically tell the rest of the world, hey, look, the United States is backstabbing their allies again. Now, we've already got a bad reputation for this. We have ever since we backstabbed the Kurds in Iraq. Now we're going to do it again. And Matthew's exactly right. If we had just given Ukraine all of our surplus we were no longer using, even stuff that was slightly not, I don't say not serviceable, but was behind technologically, this map would look a lot different. Have you seen the map lately? The Russians are going to end up taking about a fourth of Ukraine from the look of it. Now, I want you to picture for a moment if the United States would stand for the entire West Coast disappearing and being a foreign powers. There's no fucking way. Right? If Mexico were to suddenly have a viable army and say, you know what, we're retaking Texas in the Southwest. It doesn't matter there's enough Mexican speakers there and enough Mexican immigrants that feel like they're Mexican which is the whole excuse for the Donbass. They speak Russian, they think like the Russians, to take it, there is no fucking way the United States would take that. Every single industrial business would change overnight to taking it back. I know people look at like economic factors and things like that, but as I pointed out, if it was just economics, he could have negotiated some kind of trade deal, let his trucks and his products move through those ports, that is Putin, without having to have a war. No, there is something vile in this whole thing. Tens of thousands of people have died because of one man's fucking ego. And the world doesn't want to address that. Now, newsflash, in case you didn't know, most libertarians are pretty anti-war. Objectivists, not so much. And if you're a minarchist like me, which is part of kind of both those camps, you really don't want to go to war, but once you're in it to win it, and you will fight it to the last man. Because our general theory as minarchists is if we've got to fight a war, then we have to fight it because it's a matter of existence. So we better kill every single person that wants us gone. How is this any different today? How? I can't think of a single way. What are we supposed to do as the West seeing this? Just let any aggression from Moscow happen? Matt's right. The Ukrainians did that raid and the Russians did jack shit back. They didn't pop a nuke, they didn't pop any artillery. Why are we backing down? I understand there's a European and a Western need to appear to be the more enlightened, wise, and moral party in any international conflict. That doesn't work with barbarians. When we first started trying to open up trade in Japan, we met several stalling factors. In Clavel's novel, he actually talks about the Japanese excelled at giving them a little fish, giving a little rice but no fish, which was a Japanese proverb about giving someone what they think is a favor, but really it's like the bare minimum you could do, right? That's what's going to start gradually happening with Russia. And gradually, bit by bit, if this continues, you're going to see an awful bearish map. Man, if I were India right now, I'd be sweating bullets. Because if the West is going to abandon Ukraine, which is much closer to them culturally, minerally, and everything else that we gauge a country's associations by, than India is, what do you think India's odds are against China? But the only thing they'd have going for them is the terrain. That's it. And whoever decided that this should be the U.S. policy, and I have a feeling it was Trump himself, because he's looking at it like just as a pure business venture in numbers, doesn't understand what's really at risk. What's really at risk here is the idea on the international stage of if you have a big enough army, you can do whatever you want. International law? Pfft. Do you know how many times the Russians have agreed what the borders of Ukraine were? Like 4. Strict violation of that? No, not even strict. Blatant violation of it. And if we go back to who is the largest army and is willing to threaten nuclear war to get what they want, we've proven we won't do it. That means the Russians and the Chinese dominate the next century or two. Does anybody really want to see that? The Russians are criminal oligarchs, and the Chinese are fucking communists who will starve you to death if you don't agree. Yeah, I'm a little mad about this. You can tell I'm a little hot. But it is what it is, and I want to see it changed immediately. Keep in mind also, these talks were done without Zelensky present or even advised about what Trump and Putin were looking for. Now, I don't know about you, but if I were at war and no one consulted me about what the peace would be, that would smack of imperialism. Which is something else that should put European knickers in a twist, but hasn't. Didn't we say that we weren't going to be imperialistic anymore, and yet here we are acting like it? Carmona brought up that he thinks there's a cynical thing going on. They're going to divide the world into thirds. That has never worked out historically, has it? You all the way back to the Catholic Church making its big declaration of where Spain and Portugal could both have their things going on. Was it Spain and Portugal, or was it Spain and Dutch? I can't remember which two major European powers it was, but there's a line that he drew that says, okay, Spain is everybody on this side, and maybe it was the French everybody on the other. That didn't work out, did it? And the borders in World War One, after Napoleon was defeated, didn't work out, did it? Nor the ones in World War II, apparently. So, what are we expecting here? More of the same? And if you were the Russians, wouldn't you be pissed as hell about this? How many years has this been going on? And you told us it was going to be a limited military operation, Mr. Putin, yet you're still in power. We're still going to let you send more men to die? Now, people have said, well, Zelensky will fall fair with the Ukrainians. No, not really. Because after seeing this go down, every Ukrainian's like, well, fuck, the United States sold us out. They'll actually probably be more fanatically loyal to Zelensky. How do you not, after seeing this blatant betrayal? All right, so that's what's apparently going on in the Ukraine. It looks like we're about to have a second shooting war in Gaza. The IDF has already announced it's making plans to go in if hostages aren't released. A lot of those hostages have not come out on time. If I remember correctly, Hamas has until sundown today, Israel time, to release 3 more hostages, and they've been hemming and hawing about it. So expect that to heat up. Trump's plan for Gaza, we already talked about. It's a disaster, in my humble opinion. The root cause of that conflict is still something no one wants to address, just like the root cause of the Russian one. That's the religion. Speaking of that religion of peace, did you see where a single Islamist in Germany today, the same country that bowed to the Iranians by saying, hey, we won't let the Shah in our country, they had a member of their faith mow through 30 people in a car. Yeah. Not being reported too well, I notice. It's horrible. See what I'm seeing. And the main problem I see is people's refusal to accept what is before their eyes, what is truth. On to better ideas. I have encountered a new artist for me. If I'm pronouncing the Creole name correctly, it is Naika. Her given name is Veronica Naika, but she just goes by Naika for the ending. Very interesting life. Her mother is Haitian. Her father is from Africa, Matalese, I think is how you pronounce the nation. And she basically toured the world with her father as a child, going from diplomatic post to diplomatic post. She was born here in Miami, so she's a U.S. citizen. But she's been around the world. She's lived partially in Haiti, partially in France, partially in Africa, partially apparently in Southeast Asia. And all these things have influenced her sound. I've listened to like 4 or 5 of her tracks now, and I can pick up reggae cadence at times when she's singing. She also sings in a mixture of French, Haitian Creole, and English. It's pretty much love/pop music, but it's very interesting. Like at one moment you've got trombones in the band, the next moment you've got typical pop rock. I highly recommend it. I've put some of the links on my Facebook page. I'll send you all one. The 2 songs right now that I'm most in love with is one called Bella Bella, and another one called what was the mixture song? Not 1 + 1 = 3. Although that one was good too. I'll have to look it up. It's a song that she sings about her experiences growing up is mixed. Literature-wise, I'm almost done with Parasitic Mind. I've got like a chapter left. Major news in comic book literature, Diamond Shipping went belly up to Penguin Books. They owe Penguin Books $9.2 million. Which means that if you're a comic book fan, your comics are being delayed. I was wondering why I wasn't getting my Savage Sword of Conan on time from Titan, because they shipped through Diamond, and that's why. There's some interesting things coming out in the field of comics. There's a fad right now with the small independent companies to take old shows from the 80s and turn them into comic books. For instance, Thundercats has been turned into a comic book. It's apparently doing quite well. Another one, if you may not remember, is something called the Thundoids. It was an old 80s cartoon with a superhero team back in like the prehistoric era. It's like on issue 12 and still selling. I didn't think it would last to issue 4, but people are catering to it. Disney has also gotten into the comic book market over the past couple of years. Old Disney cartoons like Darkwing Duck, DuckTales, Lilo and Stitch, all that stuff has been turned into comic books now. Monthly comic books, not graphic novels. And they're doing well. So Disney may have found a revenue stream to help balance out what's going on with Marvel. I'm hearing both good and bad things about the next Captain America movie. Critical Drinker said that he thought it was pretty good. He gave it like a B. He didn't think it was a great movie, but he's like, it's damn better than anything Marvel's put out lately. If you may remember, the movie got flack because Anthony Mackie misspoke at an interview. I'm convinced he misspoke. But saying that he didn't think Captain America was about America per se. He thought it was more about virtues. A man who is resilient, relied upon. Well, those are American virtues. But Mackie in the interview didn't make it clear that he saw those virtues as being more important than any kind of jingoism or patriotism to the character. That, however, did not go over with American patriots. Conservatives are banning the movie left and right. I'm going to go see it. I've always liked Mackie as an actor. I like the character of Sam. And I'm going to give it a fair shot. I'm also kind of see how Harrison Ford's going to play a villain. Although from what I see, he might be just more of a tragic accident character. And I kind of also want to see how Mackie and Giancarlo Esposito, who's playing the real villain, play off of one another. Giancarlo plays heavies so extraordinarily well, it's not funny. This guy that played the villain in Breaking Bad, he played the villain in The Mandalorian. He had an action movie he released not too long ago, but a hitman tried to go regular, but it didn't work out, so he has to go kill guys or after his family. He's usually always gotten cast as a villain because he's got a very severe look, and he's got this voice that just when he lowers it, it sounds menacing as hell. It's like why William Dafoe has never been cast for a hero, right? The other movie I want to see is Nosferatu by Mr. Egbert. I have heard nothing but great things about it. But I can't find it locally. If anybody knows where it is, please point it out to me. I missed the Cigar Box Blues Festival that was here because of a scheduling error. That bummed me out because there were a couple performers that were going to be there I wanted to see play live. But it occurs to me, I don't think our group has ever gone down to Village of the Arts and seen what that area is really like. Now, yes, you got your foo-foo fruity people out there who live in the artist colony. However, one of my favorite bookshops is there, and it's a bookshop that has a whole wall specializing in local authors. One of the coolest books I've ever bought was about Florida crime. I bought it there. You'd be surprised the freaky things Floridian criminals tried to do. If the word gator smuggling doesn't interest you immediately, I don't know what's wrong with you. Also, one of my favorite restaurants is there, a Sicilian place, although it's pricey. And some of my favorite live venues are there. There's a couple of artists there that will host live venues on their kitchens. Taco Bird Shack, the Cottonmouth Southern Kitchen where the blues theme is going to be. There's a lot going on in that little area that is worth your time. And yes, again, I say you got the Fufu guy, you got the yoga studio, you got Village Mystic, all that kind of stuff there. But there's a lot of good artistry there as well. A couple of notable sculptors, a couple of painting galleries. It's worth your time. It really is. And it might be something we should do together at some point, the next time they're having a major event or an arts walk. What else was I going to say today? Oh, weird thing I've noticed about YouTube lately. I don't know if it's because of stuff I was researching and Google thinks I'm something I'm not, or if there's been a rise in funding from this group. But I am seeing a heck of a lot of proselytization in my feed. In the past week, I have gotten 3 or 4 ads from the same Baptist church. I've gotten 2 or 3 conversion videos about Jews in Israel. That is, Christians trying to convert Jews in Israel. And I've also gotten things like general salvation messages. One of them being a very badly animated one recently about a cowboy talking to his daughter. Now, it could just be since I've been doing some research over the past, at this point, about 2 years, into Gnosticism and early church history. The Google thinks this is what I'm into, but I view that stuff on a separate account specifically for religious matters. I'm seeing this stuff show up in my political feed. That's a little odd. I'm not seeing it show up in the one where I do just strictly stuff like arts and culture. But that's kind of odd. And these all aren't the same account. I do this in separate Google accounts too. So it's not like the information should be being shared from Google to Google account. At least I don't think it should be. Because I have different verification stuff on all 3 of those different accounts. So that seems a little weird. I'm not quite sure how to explain that. Either maybe, hopefully the benign thing I just mentioned, or maybe Google AIs are trying to pull everything together into one source. If you have multiple accounts, trying to send them to all of them at the same time and try to get your attention. I would also take it as an uptick in the funding from Christian organizations that feel emboldened since the Trump election. Because this happened very recently. This happened only like a week ago. Well, during this week. So that means the paychecks or anything for this funding probably only cleared last week or the week before. Which would be right about the time that he's been elected. So, that's a little weird. That's all I've got on my mind tonight, guys. I'll see you on the flip side. Trust the bolter, trust the book.